Can you give us a backstory of how we got to the point of rising fuel in Nigeria, fuel prices in Nigeria?
Well, globally, fuel costs, costs are going up. There are a number of reasons for that. But I'd like to quickly touch on the international.
Okay.
A couple of months ago, Trump and Netanyahu of Israel decided to go bomb Iran. So that's the basic reason.
Yeah.
International, fuel costs are going up. But before that, there was Venezuela.
Yes.
Which is a country that has the largest deposits of crude anywhere in the world, right? So Trump stopped them from shipping out crude, and a number of vehicles that tried to lift crude from Venezuela outbound were bombed, right? So that affected fuel supply on one side because a lot of countries buy from Venezuela. China buys from Venezuela. The number of other countries that buy from Venezuela. So that action cut off that supply chain, right, from Venezuela. Now, a few weeks later, Trump and Netanyahu decided to attack Iran, right? Now, not only is Iran an oil producer, Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, which is a very important, strait, right, where most of global oil passes, right? And so after that bombing, Iran says the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, right? And the goal is to punish the rest of the world for the attack on them, right? So a few adamant vessels tried to pass through and they were bombed. So right now, everybody's scared of going through the Strait of Hormuz. So right now it's shut down and, 95% of the world can't get their oil supplies because they can't, the vessels can't go through there. And so basically, we have the basic principles of demand and supply playing out here.
Yeah.
Where there is supply, prices come down. Where there is demand, when demand is higher than supply, prices go up. When supply is higher than demand, prices come down. So right now, there is world demand. That same demand is still existent, but the supplies aren't meeting the demand. And so globally, prices have to go up, right? Because if your supply has to get a vessel of crude to you and finds another way to make that happen. He incurs some extraordinary cost that he didn't used to incur. He has to build it into the cost of the product that he's supplying, and you're going to have to pay for it. So that's what's happening on one side. Now, coming to Nigeria, I would say the reason fuel costs are going up in Nigeria is because we have politicians that are not only wicked, but selfish and don't care about the masses. I say it like it is, right? Now, Nigeria is also one of the biggest producers of, crude. One of the first, many years ago, we were about the third or fourth.
The third, yes.
Yes, about the third. But same corruption and, problems of politics in Nigeria took us where we are today. But we're still one of the major producers of crude in the world. In Africa, we're number one. But the problem is, with all the crude we have, and one of the greatest qualities in the world right now, our local producer, our local champion, who is Dangote right now, is buying crude with the dollar, right?
Yeah.
He's buying at international market rate. So there's just no way you're going to expect that man to sell fuel to you at cheaper than he's buying crude. Right? Okay. So the prices that are affecting the international crude supply is affecting Dangote right now because he has to buy at the same rate every other person internationally is buying. And that's wrong because we have crude. Why wouldn't NNPC sell crude in Naira to Dangote? Why wouldn't they sell at a very reduced rate, at a very subsidized rate to Dangote? It's also his commonwealth. He has a right to that crude as much as the NNPC does. But the corruption in the NNPC and the government of Nigeria is not allowing Dangote to operate the way he should. Because if really they were to sell crude to Dangote at a very reasonable price, priced in Naira as well, there's no way we will be paying more than 50 Naira per liter of fuel in this country. So these are the basic facts, yes.
Okay. And you don't think as well the fact that we do not produce our output for crude, even according to OPEC's quota, we do not produce enough. You don't think that's also affecting us?
We don't produce enough, but that is not to say we're not able to meet our local demand. We're able to? No, we're able to meet our local demand. We produce enough to meet our local demand and still export. Right? Yes, the quantity of crude produced in Nigeria has came down drastically from what it was 15, 20 years ago. There were a number of reasons. Nigeria had so many problems. First, it was the Niger Delta issue, bombing pipelines and a whole lot of other stuff.
There's only theft.
There's oil theft, which is still going on today. There is the problem of moribund infrastructure, right? And then there's that's adamant problem of corrupt politicians who are clueless as to how to run any economy, right? So there are a number of things we can do to beef up the quantity of crude produced per day, but that is not to say we are not producing enough to serve the local market. Dangote is right there, ready to serve the local market at 650 barrels a day.
His refinery can actually do much for us.
That's right.
Yes.
But give them enough crude.
Yes.
Right? The problem that Dangote refineries is grappling with right now is that they're having to go sometimes as far as the USA to buy crude to come and process. So all of that cost of, sending a vessel to America and freighting it right back and paying port costs and all of that finally has to be built into the cost of a liter of fuel. And who's going to pay for it at the end of the day? You and I. So basically that answers your question. This is why the cost of fuel is going up in the Nigerian market. I won't blame Dangote. I won't blame anybody but NNPC and the Nigerian government that are absolutely clueless of what to do to make prices crash.
Okay. And on the other hand, we're talking about the rise in the fuel price and the hike of it. And then we have the electricity.
Yes, but before we go into it, if you don't mind, I want to show you something quickly.
Okay, yes.
I want to show you what countries that are like Nigeria, that are crude producers, are paying, per liter. In their countries. So that will tell you how wicked our leaders are.
Africa, here in
Middle East, basically.
Okay,
there are not many countries in Africa. There are a few countries in Africa that have, petroleum crude producers. Iran, for example, is selling price per liter, at the pump price, selling 45 naira. Kuwait is selling 510 naira. Qatar is selling 715 naira. Saudi Arabia is selling 930 naira per liter. Oman is selling 915, right? UAE is selling 945. Iraq is selling 975. Remember that a lot of these currencies are stronger than the naira.
Yes.
And so that's why it's looking like these prices are elevated, right?
Yeah.
So, but if we were to do what they are doing, there's no way we'll be paying more than 15 naira. Remember I said 15 naira.
Yeah.
And Iran is selling at 45, right? Do you know that even
45?
Yes, even these guys, Syria.
Okay, Syria,
Syria, who's at war. I think Syria has the cheapest pump price anywhere in the world, even with all the war that's been going on the last 10 years, right? So it's all about political will. Our leaders just don't care about you and I. They don't care that Nigerians are suffering. And I know why it's happening, but I don't know if it's something I can say here, really. There is a cabal, a global cabal that wants to hold on to power, that tells governments what they have to do. And their interest is to have control of global power. Right? And so your presidents and your politicians are not the decision makers, right? They've been put in there by some people who supported them to get into office. And what they get in return is that they get to tell you what you have to do in your country. IMF is part of that cabal. The World Bank is part of that cabal. But let's leave that talk for another day.
You know, speaking of cabal, right, and it's not the conversation, we'd go back to what Dangote said on one of his interviews, that he didn't know that the cabal in the oil industry is actually more toxic than that of
the mafia.
Yes.
Italian mafia.
You heard him say that.
Look at how much money we've lost through NNPC. NNPC cannot give account of what they've made and spent the last 15, 20 years. They just can't. It's a bag of worms, I had to tell you, if we had a functional, serious government, everybody that has worked in NNPC the last 20 years should be in jail. I'm telling you the fact, because the corruption there is thinking. And because some of our politicians are on the payroll of NNPC to ensure that nothing goes wrong, it continues to happen the last 20 years or more. And nobody's asking, can you believe that the national company that runs our crude has not audited their activities the last 20, 25 years? And nobody's saying anything about it.
I think Serap is saying something, but you know how it will be.
No, Serap is private sector. They can sue all they want, but as long as the judiciary is sponsored by the politician, you can make headway. So it's really sad, yes.
So for a typical Nigeria, we were supposed to talk about the power outages. I had the electricity guy come in yesterday, and he spoke heavily on what is happening and how it can be resolved, right? But let's just stick to the fuel prices and stuff. And I think, they're also intertwined, because
absolutely.
No country would industrialize without electricity.
No, absolutely. And it's deliberate. It's about the cabal that I'm telling you. Now, if Nigeria were to industrialize,
yes,
and grow income per capita and make the Nigerian very comfortable and get the economy working, who is IMF going to lend money to? How is IMF going to make money? Who does IMF work for? IMF work for the richest people and the richest 1% in the world that came together and built what we call the American Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve that controls the American economy doesn't belong to the American government. It belongs to this cabal. Right? And they run the IMF, they run the World Bank, they run most politicians around the world, right? So they operate IMF operates what we call predatory lending. They give you money you don't need and money you can never pay back. And this is how the owners of IMF makes money, right? So if they let Nigeria function to a point where the economy is working very well and you don't need to borrow money, how are they going to make money?
You know, with everything that you have said, it's more like you're attributing our problems to external.
But absolutely.
So, Mr. Tony, you were saying something about the IMF, and I was trying to tell you that it's more like you're attributing all of this to an external factor rather than what is happening internally.
It's a collusion. There are countries in Africa whose presidents have said no to IMF, right? Why is South Africa, what's his name, Cyril Ramaphosa, why is he standing up to America? Why are countries is it Botswana saying no to IMF loans? Why is the young man in Burkina Faso saying no to IMF, saying no to Western offers? Right? You have to care enough for your people. You have to care for your people enough to say no to IMF. IMF is a predatory lender. IMF is a colonizer. You know, the World Bank is as well. And so if they come making you offer, is a Trojan offer. It's like the Trojan horse that comes with a price, right? So you have to see the thing behind that offer and love your people enough to say no to some of these offers. These are the reasons our economies have been working for so many years. America and Nigeria has taken so many predatory loans that they can't pay. And these loans were designed to hold you down. And then when they give you this loan, there are clauses in the contract that you have to sign that says you can't industrialize, you can't fix power, you can't do a number of things. They want you to fail. Because when you fail, there is a clause on every contract IMF gives you that says that if you fail to service your loans or pay them back, that we take your assets in perpetuity. So IMF wants to see countries that are able to service or pay back their loans so that they can recolonize your country and begin to, steal your assets. And so you have to love your citizens enough to see that that's a Trojan gift and rejected. There are so many small countries in Africa that are saying no to that. That is not to relieve of the Nigerian politician of the corruption that is eating up Nigeria.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that it's time we found a way to make our votes count. Because the reason Nigerian politicians have been corrupt the last 60 years is because our votes have never counted. Read my lips. Our votes have never counted. And because our votes don't count, the Nigerian politicians are not afraid of you, the citizen. They have to be afraid of you to do the right thing. You can't do what you're doing to Nigerians to Senegalese. You can't do what you're doing to Nigerians to Kenyans. You can't do it. Their governments are afraid of them because they know there will be consequences to corruption. Okay. There isn't any consequence for corruption in Nigeria. And that's a basic problem with power in Nigeria. It's not just the crude thing. It's because we have policymakers who won't fix the policies to ensure that the Nigerian economy is functional.
Okay. And let's talk about the citizens currently. For the past few weeks, do you think businesses are shutting down or they're trying to adapt to this whole new development of power outages, fuel hike, and what is really the situation out there for business?
Companies have been shutting down the last 10 years.
But for the past few weeks?
Yes, if they've been shutting down the last 10 years and things were better 10 years ago, it's worse now. A lot of the small and medium-scale industries are shutting down. Now, in every economy anywhere on the globe, the MSMEs move the economy. It's not the big companies. There's only so many people that the big companies can employ. The major employers of labor are the small and medium MSMEs, right? Because you go to this company, he's employing 4 or 5. You go to main market, look at the number of people every day at 6:30. Look at the number of the deluge of people leaving main market. Main market is a major employer in this town, right?
Yes.
And it's the same thing in every town. So that would tell you that the small and medium scale industry is what's feeding Nigerians, is what's actually moving the Nigerian economy, right? Now, because of the cost of running their businesses, many of them are shutting down. Now, they're not just grappling with power. They're grappling with governors who are shutting down their businesses in the name of destroying markets, to fix the markets. Look at what is happening in Onitsha. Mm-hmm. Now, that governor is not wise. And even though he claims to be an economist, he doesn't understand the principles of economics. Because if he understood that, he'll understand that for every business you destroy at Ochanja or main market, you've taken food from different families.
Yeah, we have that part, but don't you think that the market needs a facelift?
Again, that brings me to the point where I say our leaders are absolutely oblivious to how to fix an economy. You don't destroy businesses and sources of income and food to make for aesthetics without an alternative. That's the same thing that this government did. Fuel subsidy is gone. But before you make such a deep announcement, there should be an alternative put in place to buffer, the hardship that your policy is going to bring upon the citizens. It brings me to the point again where I say they don't care about you and I and what we do to survive, right? You don't destroy a market without first giving them an alternative. If I were Soludo and I wanted to fix that market, Anambra has a lot of expenses of land that I could have gone into and put in makeshift shops. And I say, for the next 1 year, you guys are this is going to be the new Ochanja for the next 1 year. And everybody moves from there to the new Ochanja. And then it gives me room to work all the magic I need to work at Ochanja. Now, when they come back, they'll say it was actually what one. Oh, wow, look at what he did there. That is what a government that cares about the people does. But these governments don't care. And I can't even say certain things, but really, it's crazy. Right. We need to have a government. That's why I said we have to find a way to make our votes count. Because if our votes counted, it will happen what will happen is what we see in the West. They're afraid. Look at what's happening in is it Minnesota? Minnesota, I guess, where a whole governor sees that a community of Somalians are involved in childcare fraud. But yet she's afraid to shut it down because they have a block of votes that he needs to stay in office. Get the point?
Yeah,
they have a block of votes they have a block of vote that is important to him to stay governor, right? And so he's afraid to shut them down till it escalated to where we are today. That's what it should be. Governors should be afraid of citizens. Politicians should be afraid of citizens because their votes count. And through their votes, they put you in office. But in Nigeria, votes have never counted. So politicians can get up and make any policies. They don't care because you can't put them out.
Okay. So, Mr. Tony, do you think this will be a temporal phase? Would it be temporal? This whole fuel hike, the power outages, what are we looking at? When are we going to recover from this? 2 months from now or a month from now?
I can't give you a time, but...
because looking at the Iran and the Israeli US, I can't see... I was thinking that pretty soon we would have a way around it. Just like Trump said, would destabilize.
In my own view, it's not holding steam. I think it's going to steam out pretty soon. Right? Okay. I think the war is going to end. Trump is calling for Iran to come to the table. Iran is resisting and all of that. I don't know if Iran has enough, cachet of ammunition to sustain the war. I don't know. But if they do, we could see this running into 1 year or even more.
And it affects us the more.
And Middle Easterners are very stubborn people, right? And they're very proud people. So you could see them sustaining this the next 1 year, 2 years, but we're hoping it won't sustain. And if it doesn't sustain, things will go back to normal. But my concern is the people who are in charge of petroleum in Nigeria would rather see the costs go high because it gives them room to make a lot more profit. But on the other hand, thank God for Dangote. Right now, we have Dangote, who is private sector in the mix, and he helps control the national price of fuel, right? So if Dangote eventually goes down, things will begin to come down. We're also hoping that this guy from Bua will eventually finish his own refinery, and there will be 2 private sector refineries in the Nigerian market. So and every time there's competition, it actually helps the consumer. So we're hoping that when Bua comes on stream, he'll begin to compete with Dangote, and prices will see, prices come down. Even
I think NNPC is trying to revive one of the more.
Forget NNPC.
So we have 3.
Yes, we just have. I'm just counting on Dangote and Bua. Forget about NNPC. I don't even want to talk about.
So what do you think business owners should be doing differently this time around?
Beautiful. Yeah. First of all, if you can afford solar, go solar, right? I have a client who bought a 40 kVA solar system from China and installed it, and he's doing absolutely very well. In my office, I have solar as well. Actually, where I have my office, we've been off the national grid for a couple of weeks. So the only reason I have light is because there's a 5 kVA solar system that's right there. So if you can afford solar, go solar, right? If you can't afford solar, go sustain the fuel, but
and if you can't do both,
it's going to take the breath out of your business.
Yeah.
Or buy a generator. I mean, anything that diesel fuel is not sustainable now. But then it brings us back to what I said a couple of weeks when I came here: go export. Right? I said there's too many problems in the Nigerian market. Now, first of all, the Nigerian buyer is the worst buyer any business wants to have right now because the Nigerian buyer doesn't have spending power anymore. That's number one problem for businesses. It's already killing businesses, right? Now, number two, power is the other problem. So I'm saying, take that business that you run here in Nigeria, export it to, don't even talk about the Western countries, talk about an African country, East Africa. East Africa is a good market for Nigerian commodities. Go to Kenya, go to Uganda, go to some of these East African countries that have strong economies. Open a branch office of your business, right? What that is going to do for you, you don't necessarily have to shut down your business here in Nigeria, but open a branch there. That branch will sustain
the one here.
Because you'll earn money in a stronger currency, right? And you're going to be able to send that money back to Nigeria in euro or dollar.
Yeah.
And when that money hits Nigeria, because the naira is weak, right? You get to have a lot of money, to sustain both the business here and there.
Okay.
So you take goods from here, ship it there, sell it there, and return them in USD. That's a business model that will work for everybody. There are a lot of things businesses can do to survive, but I'm saying go international.